More than 4.5 centuries ago, this place was a small, sleepy village, and no one could imagine that this would one day serve as the capital of the Mughal Empire. Akbar decided to found a new city here. He was fresh from the victory of Gujarat, and the place was aptly named the City of Victory, Fatehpur. This is where Mughal-e-Azam, the grandest of all Mughals, Akbar, held court, surrounded by his 9 gems. This is where the peerless musician Tansen practices art, and Birbal his statecraft. There are dozens of other names, Abul Fazl, Faizi, Raja Mansingh, Jodha Bhai, who are associated with this place. The feeling which one gets here is one of grandeur.
About 225 kilometers away from Delhi, the fort of Fatehpur Sikri is in Uttar Pradesh. Akbar built it not just to impress the world with his power and riches. His real purpose was to bind together the far-flung regions of his vast empire with the thread of unity. Although the beauty of the buildings here is breathtaking, they stir the soul and evoke in one the feeling that this is merely the overture before some spiritual discourse. Akbar was greatly attached to Sikri. 2 of the happiest memories of his life are associated with Sikri: the conquest of Gujarat and the birth of his heir, Prince Salim.
He supervised the building of this fort. He had his son, which was the most important thing for him, which was the raison d'etre for him to build Fatehpur Sikri, and that he could visualize the fusion of the cultures exemplified in the architecture.
Fatehpur Sikri is recognized by its most prominent landmark, the Buland Darwaza. This grand entrance to the inner precincts easily dwarfs other structures in the compound. The moment you reach this threshold, you are made aware that you are about to enter an exceptional place. You become conscious of your responsibility to conduct yourself with corresponding dignity and grace.
Gateways are actually statements, that symbolize power and authority of the space. When you're standing next to a gateway of that scale, it's the monumentality that strikes you, which is most impressive. And that's the entire idea of, someone entering or being at the entrance of a palace complex or fort.
Emperor Akbar was deeply influenced by Sufi saints, and some historians believe that he chose this site for his new capital because this was the seat of the famous Sufi saint Salim Shah Chishti. It was he who had forecast the birth of a worthy heir.
Salim Chishti, Akbar सलीम चिश्ती मौला सलीम मेरे ख्वाजा सलीम चिश्ती आका सलीम चिश्ती मौला आबाद कर दो दिल की दुनिया सलीम चिश्ती आबाद कर दो
दुनिया के कोने कोने से लोग औलाद की ख्वाहिश से तमाम विशेष मांगने के लिए यहाँ पर हाज़िरी देते हैं, मिन्नत का धागा बांधते हैं और उसके बाद जब उनकी मिन्नतें पूरी हो जाती हैं तो फातह ख्वानी करते हैं, तबरुकात बांटते हैं, प्रसाद बांटते हैं अपनी हैसियत के मुताबिक, और वो सिलसिला आज तक जारी है।
Emperor Akbar respected all religions. His ideas were all-embracing and humanistic. He constructed the exquisitely beautiful Jama Masjid here in Fatehpur Sikri that eloquently testifies to his aesthetic taste.
इस मस्जिद के अंदर चले जाइए तो आपको ये मालूम होगा कि आप किसी जैन टेम्पल में आ गए। आज भी जैन आर्किटेक्ट मौजूद है, हिंदू आर्किटेक्ट मौजूद है, डेजेंटिनी आर्किटेक्ट मौजूद है, महलों में बुद्धिस्ट आर्किटेक्ट मौजूद है।
Be it the pillars or the arches, it is clear that the inspiration was Hindu. You encounter motifs like a lotus at one place and a pitcher or bells at another.
Among the names of great men who have ruled this country, the most memorable is that of Akbar. Not because he was a great conqueror or warrior, but because he had the wisdom to realize that the emotional integrity of this country was more important than anything else. The political independence and geographical integrity could only be preserved as long as there was this emotional bonding. Here, dwelling in Fatehpur Sikri, he conceived of the policies of Deen Ilahi and Sulh Kul that promoted communal harmony and synthesis. Here, the buildings in Fatehpur Sikri reflect this thought.
Panch Mahal is a 5-storied open pavilion without any walls. The 84 pillars supporting the roof are decorated with fine carvings. Although there is no record of the purpose it fulfilled, the beauty and serenity it exudes is unmatched. One experiences a sense of infinite open space. Man remains in communion with nature.
The most unique aspect of Fatehpur Sikri, in fact, is a reflection of Akbar's own personality. It was the beginning of a secular era that he was starting. And you see that reflection in the spatial planning and architecture of Fatehpur Sikri. Till date, architects find it one of the most outstanding examples where you see a spatial fusion of the Mughal architecture with the indigenous Hindu architecture.
Anoop Talab is built in the middle of the courtyard and comprises the innermost part of the palace. We are told that it was used as an open-air arena for musical recitals to regale the emperor.
What Akbar really stood for was the fact that he understood and respected what India meant. He wanted to be a part of all the religions India represented, and yet he was very firmly rooted in his own culture.
This sanctum was used by Akbar for his residential apartments. This also housed his library, where his priceless manuscripts and paintings were preserved. The bedroom was aptly called Khwabgah, the dream house.
The whole idea of being in his Khwabgah, where he could dream the impossible dream. He could dream of a unification of all the faiths, of spiritual unity, of the multiple faiths of India coming together.
Akbar participated in metaphysical debates and at times settled intellectual disputations in the Ibadat Khana and Diwan-e Khas. It was here that he founded Deen-e-Ilahi and formulated the policy of Sulh-e-Kul that established lasting peace between the Rajputs and the Mughals. The design of this building is symbolic of an open mind. The massive central pillar represents unity in diversity. It has also been suggested that it replicates the Axis Mundi. The architecture of Diwan-e Khas seems to embody the characteristic features of Akbar's administration.
It was a place of great intellectual discourse, high governance. I mean, he had his Navratans, he had wonderful principles for building and consolidating his empire. This is where Akbar changed how the Mughals were going to rule India. It's where he defined inclusive systems of governance. He brought Jodhabai, he had his son. He celebrated his victories, he celebrated being the great Mughal emperor. So in many ways, Fatehpur Sikri was his statement of empire.
Jodha Mahal proves that the policy of Sulh-e-Kul was not confined to politics. Akbar really desired to introduce Hindu Rajput traditions in imperial public life. Relevant practices celebrating diversity, he felt, could reinforce unity and lead to emotional integration. He began this task with his own family.
Jodhabai Palace typically shows the Hindu kind of temple kind of architecture with the trebeat system where you have beams and columns and intricate carvings on the sandstone, which are more figural than geometric in nature and more floral in nature. So it again relates more to the Hindu temple architecture.
The style of Jodha Mahal is resilient and syncretic. One encounters here both the folk and classical elements. It is said that this palace was constructed under the personal supervision of Jodhabai, and she was the source of inspiration for the master craftsmen at work.
He genuinely loved Jodhabai, and he was genuinely determined to understand her culture and allow her to bring it to his court. So to that extent, he was not an oppressive husband or emperor. He sought the marriage of the two cultures out of love of his wife.
This is a small kitchen known as Jodha's kitchen. It is said that a variety of recipes from various regions were prepared here.
History also records the kind of kitchen areas which was right in front of the Birbal house, and the kind of cooking that was used to happen there, with the number of, with a variety of spices, cooks from all over the world who would be creating all this.
The Mughal Empire was at its zenith during the reign of Akbar. Traders from different countries came to Sikri. This caravanserai tells us that the glory of the Mughal Empire depended not only on its military might, but also on flourishing trade and commerce.
Idea of bringing the great faiths of India together in a single forum. He must have dreamt of an India far greater than what the tenets of any religion were, or what the tenets of governance were. And so he was light years ahead of his time as a visionary king.
Birbal Mahal is decorated with Hindu motifs and designs that recall old palaces and temples. Raja Birbal's name is inseparable from Emperor Akbar's. Anecdotes project him as a wit and court jester. In fact, Birbal was an able administrator and greatly respected by his sovereign. When Akbar founded Din-e-Ilahi, Birbal was the first convert.
The notion of plurality was a notion that Akbar accepted with open arms. His Din-e-Ilahi was ultimately an attempt to bring Hinduism and Jains and Buddhists and the various sects of Islam together into some kind of a congenial dialogue, and realize the fact that ultimately all religions lead to the same ultimate goal. This realization in Indian history was only with Ashok, who had these rock edicts which said, "You will not disrespect any religion." And that entire story of Indian, shall we say, pluralism, the Indian respect for diversity and diverse views, got fortified by these two great emperors.
Diwan-e-Am is an open courtyard where Akbar gave audience to his subjects. European travelers who visited Sikri during his reign have chronicled its pomp and opulence in a fascinating manner.
But for the brief shining moment that he held court in Fatehpur Sikri, it was at its most learned, at its most cultured, and perhaps at its pinnacle.
This is Turki Mahal. Akbar was very excited and enthusiastic about his new capital. Indigenous artists and craftsmen were invited from various places to contribute to the building of Fatehpur Sikri. Whatever took the emperor's fancy was recreated here.
Many centuries have lapsed since, but nobody has been able to solve the riddle that why the city was deserted so soon after its foundation. Some say it was the curse of the Sufi saint, whose meditation was disturbed by the hustle and bustle of the newly found capital, the movement of the army and the troops and the guards. Some others have suggested that Akbar himself tired of his new toy. His mind was distracted. He wanted to conquer Kabul and found it prudent to shift the capital to Lahore, where from the military campaign in the northwest could be conducted much better. Some historians have suggested the flaw lay in the original design. Nobody in the early enthusiasm had cared to find out whether there was enough water around to sustain a population of a capital. Whatever be the reason, the city was deserted, the forest took over. But the work started here in Fatehpur Sikri never stopped. The seed planted struck roots, deep roots in the soil of this land, and the branches spread out. We see the reflection of Fatehpur Sikri in succeeding centuries in many parts of India, of cultural synthesis, of communal harmony. The priceless heritage was preserved and maintained.
Fatehpur Sikri tempts visitors to come again and again. Akbar's dream of Sule-Kul has the attraction to draw them like a strong magnet.
If I go to Fatehpur Sikri as a tourist, I would love to be able to understand and feel the dreams that Akbar dreamt, and to be able to understand the multiple layers at which life must be lived. There must be high sport, there must be great intellectual discourse, there must be profound spiritual belief. There must be everything. When we visit Fatehpur Sikri, we need to dream, because it would be as relevant today as it was then.
Akbar had dreamt of uniting this land full of diversity. One day, he marched out towards the frontier, to the northwest, to extend the boundaries of his empire, never to return. It didn't take long for the sun to set on this dazzling city. When the sky is tinged with grey, mixed with scarlet at dusk, it seems that Sikri still awaits the return of those who left it suddenly, without notice.